And in the middle of this economic wasteland, this deserted area, suddenly Sean Quinn comes along.
Insurance was like that, on steroids.
Quinn Direct was making £200 million a year of profit. It was so profitable, it was unreal.
The former billionaire businessman Sean Quinn has been jailed for 9 weeks for contempt of court.
The judge said you were dishonest. What's your reaction?
I'm not dishonest.
Headed straight for the white van and into Mountjoy.
What was it like when that door closed behind you?
I was wrong.
Sean Quinn was worth €4.7 billion in 2008. He was the richest man in Ireland, and in 2011 he filed for bankruptcy. So what happened? Well, this is the rise and fall of Sean Quinn. Sean came from very humble beginnings. His father was a farmer. Sean didn't want to get any education. He just wanted to make money. So at the age of 11, on the day of his exams, he hid in the bushes until the bus drove by. His teacher told his mother about this, and she wasn't happy. Sean's father said, "Leave him alone, he'll be fine. He can stay at home and help me with the farm." And so that's exactly what Sean did from the age of 11. Sean worked the farm with his father, but to him, farming wasn't enough. The money was just coming in too slow. He needed something more. Sean's father sold a field to a local man. This fella started to dig the stone from the field and sell it as gravel. Sean thought to himself, if someone can buy a field, dig the stone from it and sell it, and still make a profit, why couldn't Sean just dig up the stone himself and sell it for profit? He had the land. So in 1973, Sean took out a loan of £100 to buy a lorry and started to dig down and extract the stone from his family 23-acre farm, selling it to local builders. One of Sean's first customers was a local man. When he bought the stone from Sean, he asked him, "Why did you buy the stone from me?" He told Sean it was because he knew Sean from the football and he had always wanted to meet him. If you hopped the wall from Sean's family home, you would be on the local GEA pitch. So his family was well known in the community. In the first year, Sean made profits of £8,000, and each year the company's profits doubled. This happened for the first couple of years, and the thing that worked really well in Sean's favour was the fact that in rural Ireland, most people just immigrated once they got out of school, because there isn't really any job prospects in rural areas. Everyone either farms or they leave the country or move to Dublin. But here was this guy who started a local business, and each year he was employing more and more people from the local area. His businesses were doing really well, but he still participated in the local community, going to football games and playing cards with lads in the local area. So every time someone in the area wanted stone, they would go to Sean. In rural Ireland, there's a sense that it's Dublin versus the rest. So if your community starts to see some prosperity, you'll do your best to shop local. For a very long time, everything Sean touched turned to gold. Whenever he faced an issue with his company, he would just start a new business to solve this issue. His quarry was involved in a lot of construction work, and a big issue at the time was that it was so difficult to get cement. You had to back order it. Then when it came time to get it, you'd get about 60% of what you had ordered, just because it was that hard at that time to get cement in Ireland. So one day in a meeting, Sean decided it was time they got involved in making cement. He opened a glass factory so they could sell glass to people who were buying blocks from him for building their houses. He was paying tens of millions in insurance premiums for all his lorries on the road. So he decided to set up an insurance company so that he wouldn't have to pay someone else for insurance. Sean thought that people in Ireland were starting to see a better standard of living and thought there wasn't enough leisure facilities in his area. So he built what Sean claims to be his biggest achievement in his 40 years in business, the Sleeve Russell Hotel. This hotel is massively famous. I actually won a voucher for a night stay there in a golf tournament when I was like 15. Sean's businesses were doing so well at this point. The Quinn Group was making €600 million in profit per year. In 2005, the Quinn Group added some new executives to help manage the insane scale of the business, and they were in complete awe of this level of profit the company was making. In a small rural area of Ireland, in the middle of nowhere, was making €600 million a year in profits. I think by now Sean was making so much money, he began to really disassociate from what had actually created all this wealth for him. Up to this point, he had never failed. Sean wanted to buy shares in blue chip companies that he liked with this excess cash. However, the issue for Sean was that he didn't like the spotlight on him or his businesses. So he bought CFDs. If you own more than 3% of a publicly traded company, you have to announce your position to the market. Whereas if you buy CFDs, you don't own the share. You're making a bet with your stock exchange that the price will move in a certain direction. So you don't own the share, and as a result, you're not required to announce your position publicly. A CFD carries more risk because it's just a bet that the company's share price will move in a certain direction, and not actually purchasing an asset that has an inherent value, like owning a percentage of a company. Initially, Sean started out by buying CFDs in a collection of different Irish companies, like Ryanair and Paddy Power. But somewhere along the line, he closed all the other positions and bet everything on Anglo-Irish Bank. Anglo was, in Sean's eyes, a company that was very similar to him. It started in Ireland with a very small group of people, and it was taking on some of the biggest corporations operations in the country, and not only being able to compete with them, but to outperform them. At one point, Anglo was the best performing bank in the entire world. There were rumours that for Sean the next step was to set up his own bank, and that the reason Sean was going for such large bets on Anglo was to fund a bid to buy Anglo outright. It was the next logical step. Anglo's share price kept climbing each year, and they were increasing profits by 30 to 40% each year. It was incredibly risky, but it was paying off. But in early 2008, the housing crisis started in the US, and financial stock prices started to drop all over the world. There was rumours that Sean was heavily invested in Anglo, but no one knew how much because he had never announced anything publicly. With all these rumours circulating, the chairman and CEO of Anglo organised a meeting with Sean. Sean asked them if they had thought the bank would ever recover, and Sean was assured that the bank was very safe and there was no need to worry, but to stop buying more Anglo shares. Sean told them he had 25% of the entire bank held in CFD positions. Then on St. Patrick's Day in 2008, Anglo lost 30% of its share price overnight. When a share that you have in a CFD goes the wrong way, the exchange that you bought the CFD from will margin call, which is essentially telling the owner of the CFD that you need to pay us what you lost or else we will close the position and everything you invested goes to zero. Sean was very rich and he had lots of cash, but you can't fund margin calls forever, and the share price of Anglo was dropping quickly. Sean kept meeting these margin calls until he started to run out of cash. Then Sean would borrow money from the Quinn Group to meet the next margin call. He was paying hundreds of millions of euros in cash to keep these positions open. At this point, Sean had no choice but to ask Anglo for a loan, and they really had no choice either. If Sean released 28% of the company's shares onto the open market, Anglo's share price would completely destabilize. So Anglo keeps writing loans to Sean, using his properties as security for these loans. Once the dust settled, Sean had accrued a debt of 2.8 billion euro from loans he had gotten from Anglo. And once Anglo ran into a liquidity problem, the Irish government nationalised Anglo, which now meant Sean owed 2.8 billion euro to the Irish government. The Irish government tried to salvage as much as they possibly could from the wreckage of Anglo. Anglo had loaned 25 billion euros that was never paid back. Sean discussed with the government how he would pay back the loan within the next 10 years. The problem was that Sean wanted to do the deal on his terms and wasn't allowing the government to dictate any terms with the deal. And Sean also wanted another 600 million euros of a loan to shore everything up. There were no sure things, and Sean was after gambling 4 billion euro on a bet on a small Irish bank. So in fairness to the Irish government, it's hard to see how they could trust him. I know he's clearly a great businessman and serial entrepreneur who made billions of great decisions and employed most of Cavan and Fermanagh, but the taxpayer can't just hope that Sean will pay his debts. The government needed certainty. The financial regulator in Ireland and the government overseeing debts that were owed by the Quinn Group were worried about Quinn Insurance. The reason Quinn Insurance was able to make such high profits was because they wouldn't hold as much in reserves as other companies. So the financial regulator and the Irish government mandated that Sean add another 200 million euro in cash reserves for Quinn Insurance, and that will shore up the deal. The problem was this money never arrived. Eventually, the financial regulator decided it was time Quinn Insurance was taken into administration. Once Quinn Insurance was taken into administration, the ability of the Quinn Group to pay back their debts to the Irish government was taken with it. Quinn Insurance was the vast majority of their income. It became clear that the Quinn Group wasn't going to be able to pay back their debts to the Irish government, and the Quinn Group was taken from Sean. So now Sean and his executives had been sacked, and the government now owned the Quinn Group. That night, there was a team of people on planes flying all across Europe to sell all the properties owned by the Quinn Group so that the bank couldn't seize them. The bank was entitled to these assets because they had been used as security for the loans from Anglo, which the government now owned. Sean, his son and his nephew were all jailed for contempt of court for siphoning off assets that the bank had seized from them. Things really got crazy from here. The local community were outraged that the government had taken Sean's businesses from him. Protests broke out against the liquidators of Quinn. Cars were constantly driven into the Quinn office buildings and signs were put up in the area. Sean acted as though he was a martyr and the Irish government were persecuting a successful businessman to hide the fact they screwed up the country and caused the crash. Things were just out of control in the local community. It is estimated that over 10 million euro worth of damage was done to the Quinn Group properties. Former management of the Quinn Group and other businessmen from the area organised a company to buy back the Quinn Group from the liquidators. The Quinn Business Retention Company was set up to take back the Quinn Group and keep the jobs in the local community, while also maintaining peace in the community. The deal had Liam McCaffrey as CEO and Sean was in charge of manufacturing and sales. With a salary of 500,000 euros per year, Sean was incredibly unhappy with this. Anything other than him being chairman of the entire Quinn Group was a total slap in the face, and he quit in rage. Once again, the protests in the community kicked off. The community was so loyal to Sean for all the years he had spent creating so much prosperity in the area. The fact Sean had created all these jobs for all these people, and this new executive team came in and took that all away from him. These protests were a lot worse. Two of the upper management were attacked when they were in a cafe having lunch, where someone came up to them and poured a cup of boiling tea in Darragh O'Reilly's face and punched Kevin Lunny 7 or 8 times. The violence was much worse this time. It was much harder to attack people they didn't know, like the Irish government or the liquidators liquidators. But now the executive team was an easy target. They lived in the local community, everyone knew who they were, and unfortunately everyone knew where they lived. One evening after driving home from work, Kevin Lunny was kidnapped, beaten and tortured by 3 men and then left on the side of the road. A hitman was paid to carry out the attack and he hired 2 men to help him out. It's still not known who paid the hitman. Many think it was Quinn, but no one has ever been convicted for it. There was clearly a lot of anger towards the executive team in the area, but after the attack on Kevin Lunny, everything changed, and people began to feel like it wasn't right to continue this rage. There was an outpouring of support for Kevin Lunny. Sean denies he ever had any involvement in any of the attacks. Sean Quinn's legacy will always be remembered in the border region of Derrylin and Ballyconnell. The area is without a doubt better off thanks to the existence of Sean Quinn, but there really is only one person Sean can blame for his dramatic fall from the top of the money list in Ireland.